Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about the hero that defines Overwatch for me. The Bird Machine, the God himself, the hero I have 300 hours on, and the hero that it has inspired me to help and communicate with the communities of other marginalized heroes. Bastion. More specifically, I will be talking about his issues and how to fix them. Now, this will be a pretty exhaustive discussion, but by no means will I be able to touch on all the issues with Bastion in any sort of timely manner. Part 1. The core issues. Bastion is a huge, immobile target with a relatively small health pool and mediocre range. Sure, he's hit scan, and he just got a buff to his sentry spread, but that hardly matters when he has no headshots and a rather steep damage fall-off, especially considering that he's immobile. The only time this buff will really come in handy is when Bastion starts continuously firing at mid-range targets. Now, as a Bastion, that is almost never where you want to be, even with a barrier. The enemy can simply cover the distance and overrun your position too quickly for the buffs to come into play. Bastion also possesses zero utility, with the only valuable skill in his kit being Sentry, which, despite being already weak, is a lot stronger than his Recon and Tank modes by comparison. He does one thing, and it's a thing that is quite easy to counter. He's not like Zenyatta, where even though you pick him for his Discord and Transcendence, he has other useful abilities like healing and burst damage. Bastion literally just shoots, while immobile, and huge. His Recon mode is intentionally designed to be mediocre, and his tank mode has a ridiculous cast time, during which he can not even look around before suddenly having to land projectile skill shots. Now, the justification for all this is that he's supposed to be able to shred anything in front of him while having high survivability, but again, he's still only good at one thing, and the shredding/survivability is nowhere near as high as Blizzard seems to want you to think. It's not like if Orion charges you, you'll usually either kill him before he hits you, or you'll survive the charge. Essentially, Bastion is more of a detour sign to the enemy than a genuine threat. In a game where mobility and speed are king, Bastion's only useful capability leaves him entirely immobile. If Bastion is ever going to actually shine, he needs even just a little vertical mobility, as he has no effective way to reach the high ground where he's most powerful, other than just taking the stairs, and he doesn't have any way of moving quickly up the stairs in the first place. Bastion also has no advantages over the other heroes as a viable pick. Need anti-tank? Use Reaper or Hanzo. Need anti-barrier? Use Junkrat. Need area control? Use Widow or Ashe. Need hit scan? Use Soldier or McCree, or again Ashe. There's literally no situations in which Bastion is an optimal pick. Even in Pirate Ship, if the enemy actually realizes that they can easily overrun the Bastion or just run a Sombra, Hanzo, Torb, etc., the strategy and Bastion himself just falls apart. Bastion also has an unbelievably low skill ceiling. The only mechanical tricks to learn are transforming to reload, tank jumping, and healing between tank shots, two of which are only accessible through his ult. In Sentry, the enormous spread, the largest in the game I'd mention, at a whopping 3 degrees, makes him entirely spray and pray based, while also botching his range. A similar issue exists with Recon, though it does have the ability to land headshots. Recon's spread begins to wildly bloom after about one round. Speaking of Recon, it's insane to me that half of a hero's kit was designed to be as underwhelming as this. Right then, Part 2, the solution. As he is, even after his buff, Bastion is still absolutely abysmal. How do we fix this? We rework him into something actually useful. Now you might be asking, what would this rework entail? Well, for starters, Sentry's spread needs to be seriously decreased. Even with the new buff, starting with an enormous spread and then going to a 33% reduction is quite inaccurate for a mid-range hit-scan weapon. This idea of reverse spread is also heavily flawed, as it incentivizes mindlessly spamming through a choke. Give Bastion his old pre-rework spread, and make it bloom to the 3-degree spread over a few seconds. On a similar note, the hero needs his skill ceiling increased. So I say give him back his sentry headshots, but lower sentry's base damage from 450 to 360. As for recon, I heard this really interesting idea that recon could have two modes that are swapped with the same button as Mercy's pistol or Torbjorn's hammer, where one is his current recon and the other is a quick 3-round burst with no spread. This would be phenomenal for Bastion, in that it would make recon better without making him a slow, fat soldier with a better gun. Also, as a veteran Halo player, 3-round burst rifles are always appealing. As for Bastion's healing, it's not too problematic as it is, but I'd just like its cast time to be a bit shorter, and for the resource meter not to be depleted while at full health, or at least depleted at a slower rate. With his passive, Ironclad, I'd like to see two things happen. Turn the passive damage resistance into just regular armor, and give him the ability to see enemy silhouettes through allies. I've had a Rhine blocking my view while protecting me way too many times. Now for the more interesting changes. I want Bastion to get his tank ult on E. This idea is the holy grail of what Bastion needs. Flexibility, mobility, and a dramatically higher skill ceiling. Tank jumps, burst damage, utility, a third mode available at all time. This is it. Now, obviously, it couldn't be infinite ammo with 205 damage per shell, but it certainly could be, say, 125 damage per shell with a recharging clip like Doomfist's primary, 4 shells in total. This alone would open the door to so many cool strategies with Bastion and a more flexible character overall. As for a new ultimate, give him something that reinforces the idea that Bastion is about swapping modes to adapt. Give him an ult that buffs each mode in a unique way, like a 30% movement speed buff in Recon, the infinite ammo and 205 damage in Tank, and say full CC immunity in Sentry. Perhaps give him a little extra armor upon activation, and you have a hero who can truly function for the first time since launch. Now, I hear people say, well, what if you just gave Bastion some number tweaks, or, some basic changes? And I can certainly understand where that mindset comes from, but there are some very basic issues with it when it comes to Bastion. You see, Bastion is way too binary and way too immobile, and regardless of how much damage he does, he's way too inflexible for a game like Overwatch as it exists today. There is really no point at any time in Overwatch where you're better off having an immobile cannon that does immense damage than you are having a flanker who can poke away and get the occasional elimination on the enemy while also being very mobile and hard to catch. I mean, another big issue is, with characters like Bastion and Sim and Torbjorn, the issue is that their kits are so defensively focused that they hardly translate, or at least Bastion at this point hardly translates at all into attack. Now, this wouldn't be that big of a deal if other characters only worked on offense and they didn't translate well into defense. But the problem is that many of the characters that are associated with offense can also work on defense. So what does this do? This leaves Bastion in what's known as a niche position. And when it comes to Overwatch, being niche, or at least to this degree, is death for the character. In Overwatch, every character needs a certain level of flexibility to do somewhat different things. And with a character like Bastion, when you have the ability to do one single thing very well, or sometimes not even that well, and that's it, there's no reason to run the character. There's other characters that can do a similar thing, to a similar degree, while being able to do other things as well. Anyways, that's my quote-unquote expert opinion on the hero. I have played Bastion in every elo from Silver to Diamond, and this is what the character needs. A hero whose only function is to sit still and shoot things with a gun that has crappy spread is in no way a good design for a hero. So he absolutely requires a rework. Help me spread the message by using the hashtag Rework Bastion hashtag on Twitter, and with that, Godspeed to you all.
What just hit me? Oh, it's the throw. Someone please help me. Got him. Got him.
To my will.
Yes.